Welcome to our module on exploring science and art. So, first of all, yes, there are early learning guidelines regarding both science and art. We will look at those, but the most important thing to keep in mind is that these are just building a foundation for further learning in science and art. What that means is creating a space for kids to explore and play and create. So while we will talk about the ELGs for these subjects, what I want to focus on is helping you cultivate curiosity and encourage creativity in your child. Now, I realize those also sound intimidating, but I promise you that it is much, much more fun. And then I'll also touch on some of the activities and resources I included in our module. So for science, the ELGs refer this domain as the scientific conceptual understanding. Sounds complicated, right? But what this means is that we are building the foundation for scientific thought and using the scientific method. Basically, it's all about asking questions, making predictions, and learning about the world around us in the process. This first indicator is all about exploring the natural world, asking questions, and forming hypotheses, or asking questions about the world, making predictions. Believe it or not, kids' first foray into scientific exploration is sensory play. They take in massive amounts of information through their senses, and letting them explore and get a little messy. While they're playing, ask them questions like, how does that feel? What do you see? What if you do this? And also, don't be afraid to dig in yourself. The next indicator is about investigating nature and the world around them. A great way to explore this learning is simply to go out and take walks, explore your neighborhood, the park, even the store. Ask I wonder questions. I wonder how tall this tree is. I wonder where the ants are going. And if you have the time, explore more and see if you can find some answers. And before we move on to art, I wanted to touch a bit on STEM learning, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Sometimes art is included into that to create the acronym STEAM. These are ever growing subjects in our society, so schools have made it a priority to incorporate these subjects into their curriculum. You may hear this talked about a lot throughout your child's academic experience, and I included an informative video about that in the module that will explain STEM curriculum a little bit more in detail. And just one final thing on science, I wanted to go through the science portion of our module before we get into art and creativity. To help you put some of those ideas that we talked about into practice, I created a fun mini unit study about weather that you can do with your kiddos. It ends with a little experiment, so get ready for that. I also included a Flipgrid discussion where you can see a video of the experiment when I did it with my daughter, and then you will also be able to share your own recordings of the experiment. So let's move on to the aesthetic creativity domain. This is it, just one indicator, and I'm only going to touch on it briefly because the important part is to just allow your child to express themselves in as many different ways using as many different types of media as possible. What you really want to work towards is helping them explain their work, and there are several ways to do that. But first, I wanted to talk to you about two different types of artwork that you can do with your child. Those two different types of art, or I guess I should say two different categories of art, are process art and product art. Product art is probably the most commonly commercialized type of art for preschoolers. Coloring books and craft kits, anything with specific instructions and a specific end goal. Then there is process art, where the main purpose is to just create. Focus on the process, not the final product. Now, there's nothing wrong with product art. Those can be fun experiences, and you usually end up with some great little keepsakes from your kids. Just keep your child's focus level and skill level in mind when you do these or when you're choosing them at the store. Some of those craft kits are pretty hard for even adults. Believe me, I've tried them. And then if you notice that they're getting frustrated or too focused on making it perfect, try to redirect them to the more fun aspects of it or just take a break. Ultimately, though, our goal is to do more process art where we let the kids just do their thing, let their creativity run wild. Either way, though, let your child explore different forms of expression. The important part is how we talk to them about it. Okay, so we've let our kids create to their heart's desire. What's next? Well, it's important that we talk to them about their art. And believe it or not, how we talk to them is just as important when it comes to building up their creativity. So let's talk about some guidelines when we're talking to our kids about their artwork. Now, aside from flat out criticism, there really isn't anything too wrong that you can say to your child when they show you something they made. So don't stress too much about this part. However, there are some better ways to talk to them about their art that will encourage those self expression skills that we're looking for. Some of the guidelines: ask them to tell you about their work instead of making an assumption about their work. The last thing you want to do is to tell your child, "Oh, I love that dog that you drew." And it turns out that they actually drew a self portrait of themselves. As I'm sure you have experienced, the art of young children can be a little tricky for adult eyes to interpret. So the safest bet is to first ask them to tell you about their work rather than you tell them. Next, rather than just saying good job or it's beautiful, try to find specific things to compliment. You focus for so long and must be so proud of your work. Or, I like those colors that you picked. Tell me why you picked them. Again, there's nothing wrong with saying that's wonderful or that's great, good job. You just want to make sure that you also encourage the specific efforts they put into their projects. And of course, just one last note: whether you're doing science or art together, embrace the mess. Do what you need to do to ease your own mind. Get a craft apron or a smock to protect their clothing. Put down an old sheet to protect your table or your floors. But do really try to create an environment where they can be free to make a mess. And this can take time for you to get used to. I know it took a whole lot of self control to just let my daughter mix all the Play Doh colors rather than keeping them separate. But embrace the joy at making, you know, whatever mess that they are, because I promise you they're having fun. And that concludes the presentation for this module. I look forward to seeing your experiment videos on Flipgrid, and please don't forget to check out all those supplemental items on the module. And again, feel free to reach out with any questions. Have a wonderful week.